Hello students, welcome back. If you've been with us before, then it's great to see you again. If you have not been with us before, welcome. This is the Star Tutors YouTube channel. I am Chase. I will be your host today. No, I'm just kidding. I'll be your teacher. As we go through some of these different ACT lessons, in addition to me on the chat tonight, we also have Sarah, who is a very recent, she took the ACT a couple years ago. She took the SAT as well. She got a perfect score on the ACT. She's one of our teaching assistants in our classes. So you guys are she's one of our best. So it's very glad that she's on tonight. She's happy to answer any questions you guys have in the chat. So look out for Sarah. Hey Sarah, on that note, Sarah, on that note, can you post in the classroom groups and just post a link to the live stream and just let everybody know that we got started? Guys, if you want to say hello in the chat, that'd be great. And otherwise, we'll get started here in just a second. Hey guys, as always, try to keep this, I want everybody to I want this to be as productive as possible. So try to keep your questions very specifically focused on the ACT. Obviously, we want everybody to be appropriate throughout this entire live stream. It's very important that you are that way. We want everybody to get as much out of this as you can, and we're going to continue to do these as long as you guys continue to be as productive as you have been in the live streams over these past several months. So you're going to do great. If you have any general questions to start before we get into the review for each of the sections of the test, please let us know. Otherwise, can everybody give me a thumbs up? If you don't have any questions and you're just ready to go with the review, can everybody give me a thumbs up that you guys are here and excited? Or as excited as you can be. I don't think anybody probably woke up today being like, hey, I can't wait to listen to Chase talk about the ACT today. This is going to be great. Right? Probably nobody thought that, but at the very least, I'm going to try to make it as exciting as I can, I suppose. Yeah, guys, so in terms of the reading questions, that's a great, Dala, that's a great question. If you have so with regards to reading, the first thing you want to do is you want to pick a strategy and stick to it. For anybody that's been on our reviews in the past, and we'll talk about this again tonight, I'm very adamant that not necessarily the way to get a 36, because we've seen students get that score using a number of different strategies, but I think the best way to stay consistent is to read the entire passage. Either way, regardless of whether or not you're reading or not, the most important thing is that you are sticking to a strategy and you're not wavering from that. And I'll talk about that today, but there's really just two strategies here, right? You either read the whole passage, which I'm very adamant about our students in our classrooms doing, so that's one side of this. And then the other side is you don't read the passage and you skim. There are advantages to doing both. Of course, you save time when you skim, but from a consistency standpoint, that skimming method makes it so that there's a chance that you go downhill quickly. And what I mean by that is, like, if you have a really bad skimming passage, there's a chance you only get 3 or 4 questions right. You get really flustered and frustrated with that passage. Whereas if you read thoroughly, it's really hard to have like a really bad passage if you've really read thoroughly. You can have one where you get only 6 or 7 questions right, but it's hard to go. It's hard to get it's hard to get 7 questions wrong when you've really read the passage. But in any case, if you are using the skimming method where you skim the passage right and then go to the questions much faster, the goal in that is to stick to that strategy. You got to be consistent with that when you get to the test. So pick a strategy, and that goes for every one of the sections. You don't have time to readjust everything during the test. So you want to stick to that to the last possible moment. And if timing becomes a factor and you're on the last passage of science or whatever, then you can make that decision. But that cuts your losses really short, right? If you're on the last passage of reading or last passage of science, you have to kind of waver from what you were planning to do. That's not that big of a deal because you're only talking about 4 or 5 or 6, maybe 10 questions at most. And that's, again, we'll show you that today in the scale, but that's not going to be that big of a deal. What is a big deal is that if the first passage on English on Saturday goes poorly and you're like, this is a lot harder English, if you let that affect you when you're just 15 questions into the test and you're already starting to get flustered, that's a huge issue. And we're going to talk a lot about that at the beginning of this review. So that's a great question. If you're using the reading strategy, 4.5 minutes is perfect. I'll talk about that again tonight. That's a great question in terms of approaching this. We'll talk about that, but 4.5 minutes in terms of reading is perfect. If you read for 4.5 minutes, that means you're reading really thoroughly. If you read for 4.5 minutes, it means the questions, you can fly through the questions. If you've watched any of our real-time videos of me taking these tests in real time, for anybody that's watched these, you'll see that I take as much time as I need to read and understand it. And then when I get to the questions, there's like 5 out of 10 questions on every passage that that are just a breeze. If you're really thinking and comprehending what you're reading and you're slowing down to read it, then when you get to the questions, you're only reading like 90 lines. It's 2 columns. It's double spaced. So it's super, super important that you just stay as focused as possible. Yeah, guys, again, just for anybody that's joining the chat a little bit late, Sarah, who's identified as a moderator with that toolbar next to her name, Sarah is somebody who's our teaching assistant in our programs. Within the last 2 or 3 years, Sarah got a perfect score on the ACT as a high school student and has since moved on from that, but is somebody that's taken this test very, very recently. And again, is one of the few students we've ever had in our programs that I felt comfortable at a much younger age being one of our teaching assistants. We love to have her on these live streams because she's somebody I think that can, and I'll talk a little bit about her experience going through this, and she will as well. But she's somebody that can definitely respond and have a lot of good thoughts and questions for you guys. So again, Sarah's on. For anybody that's watching this, Sarah's on as the teaching assistant for tonight and as the moderator for tonight in the chat. And she also got a perfect score on the math section of the SAT Math 2 test. She nearly got a perfect score on the SAT, was I think 20 points short. But nonetheless, I think we'll give her a little bit of slack on that. But I think she's a great resource for you guys. And she'll be responding to comments along with me in the chat as we go, particularly when we start getting into some of these review questions, more into the review side of this. She'll be responding to questions more often than I will be. Let's see, we have a few more questions here. Last name, we're trying to get 33. Yeah, so Benjamin, in terms of any questions you have, when you're going from a 32 to a 33, 34, so much of it is about simple mistakes. Okay, and trying to limit those simple mistakes. One of the things that I want you guys to recognize, so let me give you an example of this. One of the things that I actually talked to a student about this today. Let me pull up, and by the way, guys, I posted this at the very beginning of the video, of the live stream. We're going to be using test 74F today, 74F, which is available for all students and I posted the link to that 74F test. But one of the things that I want you guys to recognize is how this scale score works. And what I'm about to say is very nerve-wracking to a lot of students, but it's a very advanced test-taking technique if you can get through it. And here's what I want to show you. It's not advanced because I'm a genius. It's not. I'm not even that. I'm sure there are plenty of you guys on this live chat that are smarter than I am and smarter than I'll be. I know Sarah for a fact is. But it's the ability to introduce these concepts and then stick to them that are so important. For example, you guys are seeing the scale of the 74F test in the background of my screen. Let's take a look at the English section as an example. What I was saying earlier in terms of, whoops, what happened there? Sorry guys, let's see if we can get this thing fired back up. Some technical difficulties. Yeah, let's see. Maybe not. We'll be back in just a second. There we go. Maybe. One sec, guys. In any case, as we go through this, there we go. We're ready. Yeah. So as you guys get into these, we write this raw scores of the English test. If you look at this, one of the things that we always recommend, and again, the trait that Sarah had as getting a perfect score on the ACT, the trait that she had better than anybody that I've ever seen is she didn't take too much pride in this test. Despite us knowing going in, like Sarah and I, she was in one of our in our classroom program, but despite us knowing that she was going to do really well on this test, She didn't have too much pride. She didn't go in thinking, I got to get a 36 or I'm a failure. She went in understanding the scale extremely well, and she didn't have any pride in like, oh, I got to answer this one because I got to challenge myself. No, instead, what she said is, I'm going to go in, and this is how I took it in high school as well. I'm going to go in, and if I know that on any recent English test, ACT English test, and this is a true statement, that I can miss 4 questions and still get a 35, right? To be safe, let's even call it 3 questions, but 3 questions on any recent English test is a guaranteed 35 anytime in the last 3 years. So if you know it's -3 or -4 for a 35 on the test, then if you see 4 hard questions, don't get flustered by those. A lot of times we'll see students, really strong English students, will start off the test. In the first passage, something goes a little awry, right? It doesn't go exactly as planned. And all of a sudden, the whole thing falls apart. And we hear afterwards, like, oh my God, the English went so badly, and then everything kind of spirals from there. Well, even if the first passage is the hardest passage that you've ever seen in your life, you still have plenty of leeway to continue to work hard. And remember that the ACT scale is going to be in your favor. If it feels like a hard passage, you're okay. You can move through that as long as you don't get just immediately down on yourself. You got to keep pushing forward and keep saying to yourself, okay, I got this. I got 4 questions here that 4 leeway, right, that I have some ability to keep moving on from, and that's to get a 35. To get a 30, we have 9 questions, right? And that's relatively reasonable on any recent test as well. You could miss 9 questions on English and still get a 30. On math, right, you can miss 11 questions and still get a 30. The key is going into this test tomorrow, don't set your expectations on I have to get this score. Instead, the way that we teach it is try to think about how you can get a certain number of questions answered correctly. The ACT and the SAT have been so blown out of proportion, even in the 10 years since I took it as a high school student. 10, 11 years, this thing went from like kind of competitive and you wanted to get into a good school to like going crazy now, where everybody is so aware of what these scores mean. But think about this, right? In terms of encouragement for you guys, this is you get 35 or 36. That's a mythical score. Think about anything else in your life. Is anything graded on a scale of 36 in anything else you do? No. I can't think of one thing. Maybe that you have one other thing that you can think of that's graded on a 36 scale, but everything else is not. So that's a mythical score. And if we start setting expectations that I got to get a 30 on the ACT, then who knows what that means, right? In our minds, we haven't processed that. But instead, if we go in thinking, in order to get a 30 on the English section, I have to get 66 questions correct, right? In order to get a 30 on the math section, I got to get 49 questions answered correctly. Then I have 11 question gap. That if I go into the test thinking that, say your goal score, right? If I go into the test thinking that I can miss 11 questions and still get a 30, that's a great feeling. And it's even better than that. Right? It's even better than that, because if you guys look at this and you come up here to the scale or to these answer choices, if you miss 11 questions on the math section as an example, okay, are you really missing 11? No. Watch what happens, guys. If we go into this test thinking I have an 11 question buffer or cushion in order to get a 30 on the math test, and I come here and let's just say theoretically I get the first 48 questions right. Up until this point, I'm 48 for 48. Right? And now I need to get a certain number of questions right. Guys, if you've watched our guessing strategy video, right, there's actually a way to guess this, right, to get a certain number of questions answered correctly. If you look at these last 10 questions, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, right? If you guess the answer column A and F the whole way down, and you've been accurate to this point, you've answered 4 additional questions answered correctly if you just guess that letter the whole way down. Guys, look what that means. If you get 4 more right, 4 additional questions answered correctly, all of a sudden, instead of 48, right, which is a 29 on this test, you answer 4 more, that's a 52. That's all of a sudden a 31 on this test by simply staying accurate on the questions you know how to do. Does that make sense, guys? Can everybody give me 2 thumbs up if that makes sense? So Ben, so Sarah just said it there, Ben. So again, when you look at this, Ben, does this make sense, particularly related to the math test? If you want to go from a 28, right? If you want to go from a 28 to a 30, on the math test, guys, you want to start. Ben, this is where you're at right now. You're at 46. That's great. 46 out of 60 is great. In order to get to a 30, let's not think about this as a mythical, how do I go from a 28 to a 30 on the ACT? That's a mythical score. We've never had that scoring grade range or grading on anything we've ever done. Instead, think about how can I be more efficient so that I can answer 3 additional questions correctly. What I want you guys to realize is that if you do this, if you're able to skip hard questions that don't get you frustrated, if you have the ability to do that, all of a sudden you go into this test knowing that this is to get a 30 on the math test, this is not a 60 question test for math. No, instead it really is a 46 question test. Ben, watch this, right? If I got 46 out of 60, right? And I pulled the 14 to 20 minutes that I was going to take to answer the hard questions. I just said, you know what? I'm not even going to focus on those hard ones. I'm skipping them. If I get to a point where I feel frustrated, I know that I'm going to have 14 to 20 minutes to save because I didn't look at those hard questions. And I'm going to take that 14 to 20 minutes. I'm going to guarantee accuracy on the 46 questions that I do know how to do. Well, guess what? At 46, look what would have happened. Right? If we look at the 46 questions down to the, right, so from here, Ben, let's say you get 46 questions right? Now you're at a 29, you're 46 for 46, or you're at a 28. To this point, our guessing letter has changed, and again, if you guys haven't seen our guessing video, I encourage you to watch it. Our guessing letter has changed, I think, to B, maybe not, let's see, 4 B's and G's. Yeah, you can even guess a second letter. Right, guys, if you picked B or G from that point on, you'd go from 46 from 46, right? And you pick that same guessing letter all the way down, you get 50 out of 60. And if you guys remember that was a 30 on the math section. That's all you have to do. All you have to do, Ben, on Saturday is find the same questions that you answered on the previous test. If you answer those accurately without making a simple mistake, okay? If you answer all of these accurately without making a simple mistake, this is you very easily can wind up with a 30 without having to do too much. As Sarah said, with 2 days left, don't do too much content review. Just see how you can get more efficient with those accuracy and staying focused on that accuracy idea. Guys, the scales do vary from test to test. So one of the things I want you guys to know is that the scales do vary for test to test. But it's relatively straightforward. For example, to get a 30 on the math section on any recent test is somewhere between a 51 and 48 questions answered correctly. Now, you're not going to ever know if that's the case, but remember that if it's 51 to get a 30, then that means the test is deemed to be easier. Right? If you have to get 51 out of 60, that math test is easier than previous math tests. If it's harder on the flip side, right, where you have to get 48 or even 47 questions right, that means the math test is harder. So they give you leeway. They give you 3 additional questions that you can miss in order to still get that 30 because the test is harder. But in any case, somewhere between 48 and 51 questions on any recent test is equivalent to a 30 on the math section. So if you want to be really kind of conservative with it and make sure that you get that, then you should be shooting for getting 49 out of 60 questions in order to guarantee. If you get 49 and you're accurate on those 49 and then you guess on the remaining 11 questions, then you are guaranteed statistically to get a 30 on any recent math scale. Any recent math scale, if you get 49. So if you want to get a 30 tomorrow, the goal should not be like, how do I get a 30 on the math test? It should be, how do I find 49 math questions that I know how to answer, that I can get right, and then I can guess the same letter down, and statistically speaking, you're guaranteed to get a 30, and almost always it will actually be higher than a 30, as it would be in this case. You'll absolutely be able to mark up the test on Saturday. You'll absolutely be able to, you'll mark up the test as much as you need. You'll be able to write on the paper as much as you need to. So 100%. Guys, this same idea applies, what I just talked about with this math section, the same idea applies for anybody that's looking on the reading test. Okay, so one of the way that we break down the reading test, just to give a short synopsis before we jump into everything here, the way that we think about the reading test is that you start out with wherever you are right now. We try to get 3 passages and maintain 100% accuracy. Okay, there's three levels of this. You start with 3 passages and maintain 100% accuracy. Okay, and then you guess the same letter down for the rest of the 10 questions on the last passage. Then you redo the 3+ passages, right? Where you try to answer the first 3 passages in maybe like, let's say 30 to 31 minutes. Again, maintaining 100% accuracy because you're taking a little bit more time than's given. And then on the last passage, you answer 2 to 3 line number questions, right? Without having to read the entire passage, right? With that last 4 or 5 minutes. And then finally, when you've moved beyond that level, now you can look at the 4 passages. If you've proven that you can maintain accuracy on those other ones, okay, then you can move on from there. Does that make sense? Guys, the 2020 August and September exams, unless the ACT changes their policies, will not be released to the public. It's December, April, and July are the only tests that are released to the public. Now, that does vary depending on the ACT's policy, but the August and September tests will not be released to the public. Yeah, Ben just said that. Yeah, unfortunately, it's only December, April, and July. As an example, this one, 74F, you guys look at the BO4 test. That was the April 2019 test. The April 2018 test was the AO9 test form. But it's all, if you look back, like BO2, that's from December. CO1, that's from July. If you look back, it's all December, April, and July. If you guys can believe it, it actually has to do with state stuff. It's like a state, I don't know. It's a statewide thing. And it even varies from state to state. That's why in California and New York, you used to not be able to take the July ACT. I think in New York, you still can. But it's a whole other thing. Don't worry about it too much. But yeah, July, December, and April are the only ones that are released. As of right now, that policy might change. Okay, guys, does this all make sense with regards to the scale? I know most of you guys know this already in terms of how the scale works, but I just can't reiterate it enough. That regardless of going into the reading section next time and thinking I got to get all 4 passages done, it's going to negatively impact those simple mistakes that where you should be getting questions right when you don't, simply because you're trying to go too fast. Let's say if you're in that tier where you answer 3 passages right in about 30 minutes. Let me show you what you guys can do. 3 passages. Let's say it's 30 minutes to answer those 3 passages. And let's just say randomly we guess like we get 32, 33, and 34 right. Okay, we get those 3 questions right with line numbers because in that last, right, these are all line number questions in the last 5 minutes, just theoretically. Right, guys, that would be putting you at a 33 out of 40. Without having to focus much on the last passage, you'd be accurate on the first 3. You get 3 more line number questions right in that last 5 minutes that you have without reading everything. And then you guess the same letter down, right? We could guess D and J, or we could guess G and G, or we could guess A and A. Any of those would get us another 2 questions right. And at that point, we'd be looking at 35 out of 40, okay? By simply not focusing so heavily on finishing the test, 35 out of 40 on this reading test for 74F would be equivalent to a 32 on the reading section. Okay, and that's all by just this notion that we don't have to be so focused on timing. This is so different from a school test where you want to get everything done. That's not how this test works. The only time timing should ever be thought of, ever, for any student, and even at that level, it doesn't really need to be, but the only time timing should be approached is if you guys are looking to get a 35 or a 36. And again, that's a high expectation to set for yourself. So you don't want to be, it's one of those things where you don't want to be too overwhelmed because your expectations are so high. Sarah can speak to this very well, but when Sarah went in and took the ACT and ended up getting a perfect score on the test, our expectation for her was to get a 34. Did I think she was capable of getting in a 36? Yeah. I did, but we didn't set that expectation because that just puts too much pressure on every single question. Then you feel like you have to get every one of them right. If you go in thinking you're going to get 2 points lower than what your real goal score is and you really stick to that 2 points lower mentality, then you have no pressure, no anxiety, no stress, and it's amazing how quickly your score improves from even that kind of floor score that you're trying to accomplish. Yeah, guys, the guessing letter, in terms of your guessing letter, the guessing letter you want to use is the one that has been used the least to that point in the test. Let me post a few videos here. If you guys want to check out these videos before Saturday, I think these are great, great examples of videos that you should be looking for. Just 1 second here. Okay, so this is an example of how to do it on the math section. And it's using the guessing technique, how to improve your ACT math score. Okay, that's an ACT math video, and it talks a lot about this idea of guessing. And it works at every level. And then we have another one for reading. Give me 1 sec here, guys. Okay, guys, this video is how to improve your reading score. Improve your reading scores. Okay, so that's how to improve your reading score from 24 to 30. But even in that 24 to 30 reading video, the concepts, the ideas, the strategies that we use, those are all strategies that can be used at every level of the test. Everything that I'm talking to you guys about now, regardless of if you're trying to get to a 30 on the ACT, if you're trying to get to a 25 on the ACT, if you're trying to get to a 36 on the ACT, these same things that we talk about right now to get to a 30 are the same things that I told Sarah 2 or 3 years ago that helped her get into a 36. Okay, and so again, it's the same strategy throughout. Sarah can speak to that extremely well. Okay, and so it's very, very important that you guys try to adopt these things at any level of the test, because these are all mathematical. I try not to speak too heavily on any of these sections without speaking mathematically. These are objectively strategies that will help you improve your score. It will relieve stress. It will guarantee accuracy, which is way more important than timing, always, always, always. And it will help you improve your score very, very quickly in a short amount of time. It is absolutely possible to go from a 32 to a 34, 100%. 32 to a 34 is talking about going from the top 3 or 4% of students to the top 1% of students. And a lot of times it just comes down to implementing certain things, like waking up, making sure that you're warmed up for the test. That's a huge one, right? Warming up for the test. Little things, making sure that you take a deep breath before each section or before each passage. Little things like that will help you because it will eliminate simple mistakes. And a 32 to a 34 a lot of times is like getting 8 additional questions right total throughout the 215 question ACT exam. Guys, this is the 74F test. At the beginning of the chat, I posted the link to the 74F test. It's also posted in the description below the video. So if you guys click ACT released exams, you guys will see the 74F test as one of those when you click that link. And you guys can click on that and follow along. Hey guys, everybody good to go? Yes, there you go, right? So Sarah just said it. I can't reiterate this enough, that at every level of the test, no matter what you guys are trying, our strategies and the way that we say it, the wording, everything stays the same at every level of the test. The goal is to get more questions right. The goal is not to shoot for a score, because that score doesn't mean anything to you. Until 2 or 3 years ago, you had no idea, or 4 years ago when you're an 8th grader, the idea of a 36 on the ACT was just not there. It wasn't. You may have known about it. Maybe for an extreme example, some of you may have known about it in the 7th or 8th grade. But for the most part, you don't. That's not a thing that resonates. What does resonate and what's really easy to understand is, how do I answer more questions correctly? How do I find easier questions? And so the question we always bring up in our classroom programs, all that kind of stuff, is just to say, like to Sarah as an example, if I were to line up this test for you guys, each one of these sections, and say, okay, here are all of the questions that you're going to answer that you can answer really easily, and I'm going to put all the hardest ones at the end for you, or I'm just going to randomly put them in, right? You would always take the first option, and that's what we try to get across in all of our programs, all of our videos. If you guys have seen those real-time videos, is trying to reiterate the importance of finding easy questions first and not getting frustrated on any one question. Yeah. So guys, that's another good point. I don't know where my ACT book is. Guys, we write these big tutorials. It's the only book, I promise you, it's not reiterating what all of our tutors and teachers edit and write. This is our SAT book. I don't know where my ACT one is. But all of our tutors and teachers write and edit these thick tutorials. And as a part of this, for those students that are willing to work hard, it's my goal and my mission through all of this to make sure that this is accessible to everybody. So we've put all of that access to everything that we edit these after the CO1 test came out in July. We have a new version of the ACT tutorial coming out. Every time we see something new, we put new things in the tutorials, and we've actually implemented that into our StarU app. So if you guys haven't downloaded StarU, in fact, Sarah, could you post, the information is in the description below, but Sarah, would you mind posting the info about StarU? And the beauty of this, and I'll talk about this at the end, but the beauty of this warm-up that you guys can do is this can all be done on your phone. So if you guys are standing in line waiting to register for the test tomorrow on Saturday, right, when you're waiting in line and everybody's a little antsy, everybody's a little nervous to go, just be doing some practice problems. Taylor, that's unbelievable. Taylor, maybe some words of encouragement here, because Taylor's been with us on these live streams for a long time, for maybe 6 months, 4 to 6 months. She's worked extremely hard. Absolutely, Taylor. Maybe just if you want to provide some words of encouragement to everybody, just continue to work hard. She's a great example of that. So, yeah, Mercy. So again, Mercy, go into the test thinking that you want to get a 28. I know that's not the first thing that comes to mind, and I know that's counterintuitive, right, to what we might be thinking in terms of like, oh, I got to get a certain score. But rather than feeling so overwhelmed, rather than doing that, just go in and think, hey, what do I need to do in order to get a 28 on this test? How many questions do I need to answer on each section? And then it's really easy to figure out how you can accomplish that. And then there's no more nerves. On the math section, to get a 28, you got to get 46 questions right, or somewhere around that number, right? Less than that, really, because if you are accurate, you can guess, and you'll really get to that 46 number. But 46, right around there, 47 is a 28 on the math section on most recent tests. So figure out, how am I going to skip 13 questions that are going to frustrate me, that are going to be hard? How do I skip those to guarantee accuracy on the 47 that I do know how to do? And boom, there's a 28. Okay, you guys got this. So let's talk about the English section. Let's get into some of these. Reviews. Okay. So guys, English is largely. Yeah, thanks, Taylor. I appreciate you posting that. Okay. Taylor's a great example. If you work hard, if you keep taking deep breaths, if you just realize that this is about how many questions you answer correctly, not about a score that's going to define the rest of your life. It's about how many questions can I answer correctly in the moment. All of a sudden, you're feeling a lot better and a lot more grounded in terms of what this test means, rather than like, if I don't get a 30, then I don't go to this school, and then I'm a failure, I don't get this scholarship, my parents are mad at me, all that stuff. That's all anxiety stuff that's going to make it even worse. This is a 3.5-hour test where you have to be focused all the way through. That's going to make it way more complicated, and it's already going to be stressful. Don't add to that stress by thinking that a score is going to mean something. Instead, think about, how am I going to get this many questions answered correctly, and then go do it. Right? Take a deep breath and go do it. And I promise you that mindset will make a huge difference on Saturday, and it will increase your score. That's what those videos are that we posted a little bit earlier. So in any case, guys, I just want to bring up a few things with each section of this test. On the English section, I want you guys to remember, okay, on the English section, what I want you guys to remember is that these are the most important things. And to be honest, guys, if you're not already scoring a 36 on the English section, this is the only section with maybe a little bit of strategy review for reading and science, or a strategy review maybe for math, reading, and science, as Sarah said earlier. This is what you really should be concentrated on, because points on the English section are worth the same as points on the math, reading, and science section. And you'll know that the punctuation rules, and all of this is, again, available in the StarU app for free. You can go read about all of the punctuation rules that are found on the ACT exam, all of them. You can do it for free, and for those students that do that, it's going to be amazing, again, that how much you can review between now and then. So punctuation is a huge one. Okay. The other thing that I want to mention on English, and again, most of you guys know this, there's not a ton of strategy involved with the English test. right? There's not a ton of strategy. It's did you memorize grammar rules? Can you memorize grammar rules? And then if you do that, what I want to point out is that there's usage and mechanics, which is just these mechanics are just grammar, right? Usage and grammar questions. And then there's also what we call main idea, or what the ACT calls rhetorical skills questions. Right? These are the ones that are like, should the author add this sentence, blah, 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 right? What I want to point out to you guys is that on the English section, you get 36 seconds per question on average. 36 seconds per question. Especially if you're a junior, if you choose to memorize all of the grammar rules, each grammar question, and there's 50 of them, there's 50 grammar questions and 25 main idea rhetorical skills questions. If you choose to memorize those 50 grammar questions and you have the rules down where you never have to think about them again, 15 times 50 seconds, right? And this is where that app thing can come in. If you just read about these lessons, 15 times 50, right? That's equal, you get 750, right? Which is 12.5 minutes. All right, is that right? 12.5 minutes? Well, geez, if you can get 50 questions done in 12.5 minutes, then when you get to these main idea questions, the only thing that I want you to do is to reread. These main idea and rhetorical skills questions, if you have time to actually read the question and think about what the question is asking, and then answer it, are very, very easy reading comprehension questions. They're easier than the regular reading comp test. Right? That's all that these questions are, but you do have to have time to go back and reread what they're saying, and then to really read the question and think about what they're asking. If you choose to memorize all of the grammar rules that could be covered, and there's probably 10 of those, realistically, that's probably 10 hours worth of work, 15 hours worth of work to memorize everything. You get 12 and a half minutes for the grammar section. That's all it's going to take you. It's going to take you 15 to 20 seconds maybe to answer the grammar questions on average. Okay, and then when you get to the reading comp, all of a sudden, it's pretty nice to have 32.5 minutes, right, for all of the 25 rhetorical skills questions. That's pretty sweet, huh? And that's what we're trying to go for here. There's not a ton of strategy with regards to that grammar section. Not a ton of strategy with the English section. Right? We just have to continue to work through it. We have to continue to think, what do I need to do to answer a few more grammar questions correctly? And again, from a content perspective, like what can I memorize before the test on Saturday? The only thing that I would be focused on, no math, no reading, no science, maybe from a strategy perspective you can focus on those. But if you guys can believe it, of the 50 questions that deal with grammar, 10 questions deal with punctuation, compound sentences, semicolons, right? Fanboys conjunctions. If you guys remember that whole thing, conjunction, junction, what's your function, right? Good thing I'm not a professional singer. Okay? If you guys remember that, if anybody's seen that 80s animated video that goes through it when you guys are like in the 6th grade, that whole conjunction, junction, what's your function video, that's exactly what the ACT is testing you on. Most of the time, I just have to convince students that it's really that simple because people don't believe it. It's like there can't be any way that this is what's being tested to get into college, and 100% of the time it is. A semicolon rule, right? If you guys just know that a semicolon is equal to a period when it applies to the ACT, and then if a period can't be replacing that semicolon, then it's wrong 99.9% of the time. That's pretty straightforward. That's pretty easy. That's just a rule, and all of a sudden the semicolon questions that are supposed to be hard according to the ACT become extremely easy because we just took the time to memorize the semicolon rule. And that's something that can be done certainly between now and Saturday. Okay, Logan, I'm glad you've seen that song before. Sometimes I get blank faces. I'm getting too old. We used to watch that video. Can anybody give me a thumbs up if you guys have ever seen that video? Conjunction, junction, what's your function? I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill. Right? Anybody ever seen those videos? Sometimes I feel like I'm getting way too old. If when the conjunction, junction video falls on deaf ears now, sometimes. Okay? So I want you guys to continue to think about that. Okay, so if you guys keep thinking about this, that's the idea for the English section. Can everybody give me a thumbs up if you have the English section down? Okay, there's not really a lot of strategy to talk about. I wouldn't do the questions out of order. Sometimes we get questions about like, should I do all the grammar questions and then come back to the main idea ones where I actually have to reread? I wouldn't do it that way. I would just do it where you're focused on going through the entire test, answering the grammar questions as they come, and then when you've memorized those grammar questions, it does give you the ability to go back and reread, even if you haven't been reading that carefully while you've been doing those grammar questions. When you get to the rhetorical skills main idea questions, you can come back and make sure that you do reread. Yeah, so John, I can't reiterate it enough that if your most common mistakes are comma rules, you can go into the StarU app right now. Okay, guys, look, this is the home screen of the StarU app. Okay, it takes 5 seconds to create a student account. You can download it in the App Store or Google Play. You can find it at www.staru.co. If you guys click ACT and SAT practice lessons on the home screen, okay, and then you say self-study, and then you click ACT English, and you click punctuation, our entire tutorial, we've just copied the pages in, our entire tutorial is right here. All right, if you guys are willing to work hard, I will release every piece of content for free. But I'm not going to do that if it's just about, I just want to improve my score, but I'm not willing to put in the work. For those people that are willing to work hard, all of this is available for free right here, and it's updated all the time based on the most recent tests. And you can just come in here, and if you have comma issues, you just read about it. Just read about commas, and then go and click the button and do practice questions that specifically deal with commas. Right? You can time yourself if you want. You can click begin timer, and you'll get the amount of time that you typically get, and then you can do a grammar quiz that involves all of the punctuation rules that you might see on the test, right? Do all of the questions. You can click begin timer again, and that timer corresponds to the actual amount of time that you'd have on that amount of questions for the ACT, right? You get 10 questions, you'd have about 6 minutes to do it. So again, guys, I highly encourage you guys to do that. Okay, and that again, takes 5 minutes to set up a student account. And you just click SAT and ACT practice lessons. If you're struggling with commas, that is absolutely something that I think is fine to study between now and Saturday. It's not going to be overwhelming, right? You just spend some time reading through that, doing a few practice questions. That's very different from the content on the math section, which can be much harder, which can be much more frustrating, which can be a lot more time consuming. Don't focus on math content between now and Saturday. The number of questions, the points that you get on the English test are worth the same amount of points that you get on the math test. So why overwhelm yourself with the math content when English questions are really easy? Even if you're already at a 32 on the English section, those 4 points to go from a 32 to a 36 on English are way easier than they are to go from a 26 to a 30 on math. Okay, so that's where you should be focused. Okay? So moving back over to that 74F test. Let me give you guys just a quick example of what I mean here. Okay, the creator of these sculptures is, look how long this took. The creator of these sculptures is, these is plural, sculptures is plural, the creator is singular, so is needs to be singular, that takes 2 seconds. Right, here's a pronouns question. And again, all of this stuff covered in the app, pronouns, right? I knew that was a pronouns question. This is how we identify these things. Okay, again, it's so important. Ironically enough, in Sarah's case, Sarah's maybe the best math student we've ever had come through our programs and that's why I think she got a perfect score on every section except for the math section. I think it was 36s and then 135 on the math section. And ironically enough, the only thing that we were really focused on for her was to improve English and reading. And she was already going to do really well. So Sarah, don't let me get you... Sarah could have done it without my help every day of the week. In a lot of ways, she pointed out things that I had no idea how to answer. But in any case, maybe focusing on this too much allowed her to improve her score. Okay, and again, if you know that this is a pronouns question because the word her comes up, right, or our, or whose, all of those are pronouns, and that allows us to answer those questions then. Okay, so, right, we look back here, whoever created the art, your intention is clear. Each gift came with a note expressing special gratitude for libraries, books. The last gift came with a note in which the mystery art reveals her gender, right? If you know that it's a pronoun question, created the art, her intention was clear, right? Her is not underlined, which means that it's correct within the sentence. So if we have a pronoun, it has to be in agreement. Okay? It has to be in agreement with that section, with the rest of the test. And if her is not underlined earlier in the test, then that means it's correct, so we know it's talking about her. That's a pronoun rule. Right? If your head is down and you know these rules, those questions take 10, 15 seconds. Without really even looking at this, you can kind of see why number 9 is C. You barely have to I didn't even look at the passage. I've seen this test before, but not for a long time. It's not like I sit there and read through this. And that ability to stay, I said this in our other live streams, guys, and I don't mean to talk too much, but I was an extremely lazy and bad student. And I hate that. That's a horrible trait. So I don't mean to say that in a good way. That's a bad trait. But when I was 16, 17, 18 years old, the last thing in the world I want to do was focus on becoming smarter. And that stinks. That's not a good trait. However, that laziness, that ability to just be totally okay with everything, no stress. I had no stress, which again is not a good trait because you want some stress. You want to do better. You don't want to be overwhelmed by something. You don't want too much stress, but you want a little bit of stress because that creates more focus. Okay, but if you have that, if you can balance this idea of kind of being like, yeah, whatever happens, happens, while also staying focused and working hard, that's how this becomes a 36 test, right? That's how you can get a perfect score because all of this content can be covered. Okay? So as we move into the math section, everybody good to go with the English section? Again, not a ton of strategy work with the English section, so I'm not too worried about it for you guys, hopefully. Okay, so next on the math section, right, as we move into this, for those that have been in our classroom programs and those that are working through this, you guys know that this 3-pass, right, this 3-pass method that we talk about so frequently is just so critical. And Sarah, maybe you can give kind of an update on this, okay, on your experience with the 3-pass thing, because this is something that we introduced. That even for the highest level, so if you're testing at a very, very extreme level, a high level at the math test, this is a very, very important idea. My mom's a math teacher. I lucked out on that because some of these concepts were ingrained in my mind from a very young age. So I had to learn this stuff. Had I not had that, just kind of lucked out on that, I guarantee I wouldn't have done well on this test. But the combination of knowing those concepts because my mom forced me to know them, and this ability to kind of stay lazy a little bit and be okay with only seeing a certain number of questions allows you to get a great score. The 3-pass method is designed on this first pass to only look at easy questions, to never get frustrated, to only look at easy questions. Okay, so let me give you guys an example of this. I skip, for anybody that's watched our real-time videos before, I try to skip a lot of early questions, okay, because I know that they're going to be more frustrating than I want them to be. If you see a word problem early on, that should be an easy question because the math test is in order of difficulty. But that doesn't mean that it is going to be an easy question after you've already completed 75 grammar questions. And now you have to jump right into the math test. And now your mind is fried because you don't get a break in between English and math. Okay, so here's what we've determined with this 3-pass method. My goal on the first pass, going all the way through the test, 1 through 60, right? I'm going to see every question before I ever get frustrated, going 1 through 60, all the way through. And my goal on this first pass is to find just easy, simple questions that I understand right away. So let me give you an example of this. Okay, there's 10 minutes on the clock right now. You guys will see this. This is the 74F math test. My only goal is to skip word problems, never think about problems that are going to be time-consuming. I know I'm going to have enough time to get back to those. Watch this. Ready? I have 10 minutes on the clock. I'm going to start the timer. Question number 1. By the way, that math video I posted earlier goes through an entire test on how you can improve your math score 3 to 4 points. For what value of the equation is 2 to the 2x plus 7 equal to 2 to the 15th true? That is not a very hard question if you know how to answer, right? 2x plus 7 is equal to 15. The bases go away if they're equal to each other. Subtract 15 or 7 on both sides, 2x equals 8, so x is just equal to 4. I didn't have to think about that question or sift through information at all. Same thing with number 4. Let the function be defined as this when when it's f of 3. So that just means if x is 3, what does f of x equal, right? And I know most of you guys know this, but you get 5 times 3 squared, and you get a calculator all the way through, plus 4 times 3. I write everything out. If you can write everything out, that's super important. Okay, so 12, 15, right? You get a calculator. 7 times 15 is what? 105, I think. 105. 3 squared is 9 times 5 is 45. So 45 minus 105 is equal to negative 60. That question may have taken me a second to do, but I wasn't confused about what I was doing. And hopefully I didn't make a simple mistake. I'm not doing number 5. I'm not doing number 6. And number 7, I love geometry. Love geometry. So I'm going to answer this one. Is a diagonal, the measure of ABC is 40 degrees, and the measure of ACD is... Okay, so I know that in a parallelogram, which they give me here, the opposite angles are equal. So this is also 40 degrees if this is 40 degrees. 40 plus 57 is... not 127, is 97. If I know this is a triangle, I know it has to equal 80 degrees, and I'm trying to find this angle. 180 minus 97 equals 83. Right? Okay, let's keep going. Number 8 looks pretty straightforward, pretty easy. If x equals 1/2, we get our calculator all the way through, so 1/2. I'm writing everything out as I go. It doesn't take that long, and it guarantees you don't make simple mistakes. 4 minus 3 over 1/2 is 1 over 1/2. Be careful, this is actually equal to 2. It's not equal to 1/2, right? 1 over 1/2 is equal to 2. The standard coordinate plane, what is the midpoint of the line segment? If you guys forget the midpoint formula, guys, here's another really good helpful hint for midpoint. Just graph it out and figure out which answer choice looks even relatively correct, right? So we get 3, 8, which is somewhere up here, and we get 1, negative 4, which is somewhere down here. Obviously, anything that's negative x, right, is not going to be right because we're looking at a line that looks like this. We're looking at the midpoint of this line right here. Okay? And I'm explaining this stuff even as I go, and I'm still going to be way ahead of time. Okay? So somewhere like right in this area is where the midpoint is. That looks about 2, 2, 2. What do you know? Even if I forget the midpoint, I can still graph that out and figure out, relatively speaking, where that line is. And then I'm not going to do number 10 because that one looks hard. So I'm going to stop there. And what you guys will see is that I answered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. And this is a great drill for you guys to do. And after number 10, you write down this, right? I answered 5 questions. I had 6 minutes and 45 seconds of banked time, right? That can be used on any section, but I still answered 5, hopefully right. I'm 5 out of 10 correct, hopefully. Okay, I'm hopefully 0 out of 10 incorrect. And I'm 5 out of 10 skipped. But what you guys will see is that was real time. That was 10 minutes that I set the timer for. And I completed those questions in 6:45, meaning that I banked. I added 1:45 to my time by just simply not looking at hard word problems. Can everybody give me 2 thumbs up if that makes sense? That's the whole point of the pass method, is by skipping any word problem, anything that's going to get us frustrated. Most time we have high-level students, and Sarah, I've never seen a student adapt to this so well that's very high level, because most high-level students want to think that they know everything. That's true. High-level students are smarter than I am. Sarah is smarter than I am. But I've looked at this test way more than anybody, probably more than all of you guys in this group chat combined. Definitely. There's no question. I've done this every year, every day for the last 8 years. This is all I've been focused on. So there's no question that I know this test from just a standpoint of like understanding it better than you guys do. Some of you are smarter than I am. There's just no question in my mind. But the people that can take my knowledge of the test and understand what we're trying to accomplish here, and then take their own natural great ability and to work hard and be a great test taker, if you can combine those 2 things, you guys, the sky is the limit. That's how you get a 36 on this test, because you're working hard to review the content and you're applying things that now I have 1 minute and 45 seconds extra time to apply to any other question on the test. And guess what? When I double back and I come back to the beginning, do I really think number 1 is going to be that hard? Or number 2? No. Marcus's favorite casserole includes 3 eggs and makes 6 servings. He will modify the recipe to use 5 eggs and increasing all other ingredients. What is the total number of servings that it will make, right? So 3 eggs to make 6 servings over 5 eggs to make X servings. Cross multiply, we get 3x equals 30. So he's going to make, was that question hard? No. Did I know it wasn't going to be hard? Absolutely. It was number 1. I know the math test is an order of difficulty. But that doesn't mean I need to answer it right away. After just doing 75 grammar questions, 75 English questions, I don't need to just come into number 1 and be like, casserole servings? When did we learn about casserole? Right? That's not what I want your first thought to be. What I want your first thought to be is, oh, looks pretty easy. F of x, I'm doing that right now in school. That looks pretty straightforward. Right? That's the types of thoughts I want you guys to have, rather than where do we start talking about casserole recipes and how do I set up a proportion. That's way, way more complicated. Angle measure, triangle measure, right? 180 degrees, that's just drilled into your heads in geometry class. So why not try to do that question before we ever get back to the, again, not to hate on the casserole, but hate on the casserole, right? Why do that question first when we have all of these other great questions to answer that are way easier? At the end of the test, at the end of this first pass, our goal is to maybe have 30 out of 60 questions, let's say 25 to be, right? 25 out of 60 done with maybe 35 minutes left over. And it's amazing how easily and how well that works out. Does that all make sense, guys, from the 3-pass method on math? As important as that is for the math section, it is 1,000 times more important for the science section. Any questions on math? Any general questions on math? Sarah, anything to add on that? Any general questions on math? While you guys are typing your questions, one of the things I want you guys to remember is that you all have the ability to get better. This test is not going to define you. It's not going to be something that you think about in 10 years, unless you're a lowly ACT tutor that's doing live streams on Thursday nights, right? Unless that's you, this is not going to be something that defines you. You're the same person walking in on Saturday as you are walking out. In the best way possible, nobody cares. Okay, your parents do, you do, maybe if maybe a teacher does, but that's like 5 people out of 7, 8 billion in the world. Okay, you're walking on the test on 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning, you come out at 12:30, the sun is still shining, you're still 16, 17, 18 years old, you can still drive for the first time ever, right, at least in the last year or two. That's super fun. Right? You guys have so much resiliency to be going through what you're going through with all the craziness that's going on right now, and to be able to adapt to that, not going to school or going to school but not sure if you're going to school, right? All that kind of stuff is it just gives you the ability to adapt to anything. If you guys have enough resiliency to not know if you're going to school next week or to be virtual school, whatever, if you have that type of resiliency and still to adapt to that, then believe me, this ACT test should feel like nothing on Saturday. Okay, it should feel like nothing. Yeah, John, if you just want to try to create a new student account, I can try to work through that forgot password issue. I'm not sure why it's not letting you, but we can try to work through that. But if you want to try to create a new one with a new email address, it's not a big deal. Yeah, hard questions in the math section. The same way we tackled these last questions. Sarah, this might be a good question for you. Do you remember how many questions you answered? Do you remember how many questions roughly you answered on the last 10? The key to the last 10 questions, guys, is to find the concepts that you know how to do. For example, my best concepts, and you have to practice this to know, I love median questions. So I know that 51, unless I make a stupid mistake, I know I'm probably going to get 51 right. I like systems of equations questions. I'm good at 52. I can't stand sequence questions, so see you later, 53. 54, I like sine and cosine, so probably, but not necessarily. That's not a guarantee, but maybe. Okay, same thing here. I'd say probably. Absolutely not on 56. 57, determinants of matrix are actually pretty easy if you know that rule. Absolutely cannot stand positive, even integer, all that kind of stuff. Hate that. Maybe 59 and maybe 60. But let me show you guys this. Like 60 is a great example. I circled it for a reason. Yeah, there you go, guys. Sarah answered 5 to 7 out of the last 10 questions. Only 5 or 7. 5 to 7. She didn't answer them all. She got a 36 on the ACT. She didn't need to answer them all because she thought about this and really understood what we were trying to accomplish here. Let me just give you guys an example. Question number 58, for the smartest math student in the world, is going to take 2 minutes to accomplish because you have to sift through so much information. If you look at question number 60, this is an angle bisector. That's a geometry problem, right? PK bisects LPM. So let's just draw that out. Okay, so LPM, there's PK. That's just an angle. Okay, LPK equals 4x plus 18. What is the measure of KPM? Okay, all we're doing, right, is KPM equals 4x. Oh, LPM, right, LPM equals 11x. So 4x plus 18, because this is an angle bisector, 4x plus 18, right, times 2 is equal to 11x. And then we just solve algebraically. I can't stress, though, how much easier angle bisector questions are than anything that deals with consecutive, even, negative integers. Honestly, to a certain extent, number 60 is probably even easier than that casserole problem earlier. A proportions question that's a word problem. Yeah, guys, so there's a certain confidence that comes with skipping questions on the bubble sheet. I'm with Sarah. I fill it out, and I just try to be really focused on the question number I'm on. So, like, even if I have to skip a question, I'm just trying to be as focused as I can be. I'm like, okay, I'm on number 60. Let me bubble in this answer for number 60. I try to be as kind of decisive as I can be. But I agree with Sarah. Just from an anxiety standpoint, I think it would kind of drive me crazy if I tried to bubble it in all at the end, trying to figure out if I had enough time. So I just bubble it in as I go. And then again, if you're sacrificing questions to guarantee stuff like accuracy, guarantee that you have enough time on the bubble sheet. Yeah, for number 55, cosecant is equal to 1 over sine x, and secant is equal to 1 over, right? So this one, what is the period of the function? Right, the period of the function is just 4. It's the same, cosecant period is the same as the sine period, so 4 is equal to b, so it's 2 pi over b. That question took, to get pi over 2, that question took 30 seconds. No, it took 5 seconds. If we know what the period of a function is and we know how to get it on a graph, cosecant doesn't change anything about that. So the cosecant, right, only tangent and cotangent change with the period. And so it's just that straightforward, guys. I can't reiterate this enough, that Sarah, somebody in the last 2 years, if you don't want to believe me because I did this a long time ago, somebody in the last 2 years is on the chat trying to help you guys who got a perfect score on the ACT, and she just said that she only answered 55 to 57 questions, right? Or was it even less than that? What she said? She said she answered 5 to 7, yeah, so 55 or 57 questions, and then was okay guessing on the last questions. On the last 3 to 5 questions, she just guessed on them. But she was accurate on the other 55 to 57, and she still got a perfect score. That's a lot of trust that you guys are putting in me and to say, like, hey, this is going to work out. But if you do it, I guarantee it works out every time. And that's where the advantage of me having looked at these tests for so long and so often that it helped. I hope that it helps you guys realize that this really does work. The answer, guys, Brianna, the answer to any sine or cosine always is less than 1. The period is not always less than 1, right? Yeah, because you could have a period of anything. You could have a period of 4. Sine x is always equal to 1 or less. That's that unit circle stuff. Okay, guys, any other questions about the math section before we move on to reading? And before we move on to reading, there's another really important point for us to talk about. And that's the break. Okay? Because, guys, what happens after the math section? I'll just really quickly answer that last question about SAT math and ACT math. SAT math doesn't have nearly as many concepts to cover It covers pretty much the basics of Algebra 2. ACT Math covers like the outskirts, right? The outskirts of Algebra 2. I have no idea why anybody would ever need to know a matrix problem. I've tutored math also for the last 8 years. I've never seen anybody need to know anything about matrices ever, unless you're a mathematician or a statistician. Okay, other than those two things, I've never seen anything. So I have no idea why the ACT asks you about matrix, but they do, matrices. And so, yeah, it's just really important. So that's the only difference. That the SAT is more condensed. It's more focused on the main topics of Algebra 2. The ACT is much more broad in terms of what they could test you on. Guys, everybody just answered this perfectly, and because nobody else brought anything up on the math section, let's move to reading. But as these guys just mentioned, Mercy and John were perfect on this, right? They both said there's a 10-minute break, and this is absolutely essential to recognize. Okay, there's a 10-minute break between the math, so math, right? Then a 10-minute break. Okay, and then reading. Math, 10 minutes in reading. Sarah, maybe you can address this one as well in terms of what you did during that break. But the same thing applies, right? The same thing applies on this math section, or rather on this break, as what we talked about at the beginning of the test, right? In terms of doing the warm-up. Most students that we've had, and we've seen this, right? We've done proctored practice tests at our offices. Before COVID stuff, we did proctored practice tests at our offices where we'd have 10 to 15 students, and despite me telling everybody, take the break seriously, we tried to simulate those practice tests as closely to the real thing as possible. Despite me saying, like, during the break, really pay attention and try to get ready for the reading section, we'd have students go out in the hall and just start talking about, oh my God, I didn't do well in the math section. What'd you get for number 47? That was the hardest math I've ever taken. Deal with that after the test. That's not going to help you in any way for the reading test, right? Or they start talking about things that don't even involve the ACT. What, you want to go to Chipotle after this? Or you want to, right? It's like, that has no benefit in any way to getting ready for the reading test. What does have a benefit, it doesn't mean that you have to go out there and start, like, taking out a note sheet and thinking about the reading strategy, but instead go to the bathroom, right? Use the restroom, get your food, get some snack, make sure you have a snack ready to go. Okay, as Sarah just said, refresh and clear your brain. Grab a drink of water, maybe walk around. It doesn't mean that you have to be sitting over in the corner, right, not talking to your friends, being like, get away from me, I'm thinking, right? You don't have to be doing that, but it's really important that you start to get ready. So maybe take the first 5 minutes to do these things, right? Just take a deep breath. Don't think about how hard the math test was, because that's just going to get you psyched out for the reading test. And then get back in your seat, get back in your desk. While you're maybe eating your snack, right? You can still be sitting there eating your snack, drinking some water, and start thinking about what you're going to do for reading. Thinking about reading, right? Make this time efficient. While you're at the testing center, you should be at the testing center. You should be present at the testing center. You should be utilizing that time to think about the test, not thinking about anything else. There's plenty of time to do that. There's the rest of your life to focus on everything besides the ACT, believe me. But right now, we have to be focused on the ACT exam. Does that make sense, guys? Can everybody give me a thumbs up if that makes sense? Thumbs up, guys, if that makes sense. Just in the chat, if you guys can. There's no break. There's only one break. It's 10 minutes. Well, if you take the essay, there's a break after the science section too to take the essay. But there's one break, one big break right in the middle of the test. English, math, then break, and then reading and science, and then you're done. Or you have another break and then you take the essay. So if you're not taking the essay, there's one big break in the middle, and it's very, very important that you utilize that break to the best of your ability, that you focus on, okay, what do I need to do to get ready for the reading section? And I promise you that will make a huge difference on reading. A huge difference. Yeah, great question, Mercy. Yeah, so I would say they probably take it's not like they're just like English Start Math, right? It's a great question. They probably take like 2 to 3 minutes maybe between English and math. They'll explain the math section. Okay, now you have the math test. That's 60 minutes, 60 questions. You can use a calculator, make sure it's approved. Right? There's a little bit of a break as they start to kind of prepare you between English and math, but it's not like immediate, right? They give you maybe 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes to kind of explain the math section. Maybe they tell you the bubble sheet. They say look at your bubble sheet, all that kind of stuff. So there is some time to just like take a drink of water, to take a deep breath before you start the math test. And the same thing is true of the reading to the science test. It's a good question. Guys, in terms of eating breakfast or anything like that, I would say eat breakfast if you typically eat breakfast before school. If you're not a big breakfast eater, then certainly maybe eat something just so your stomach's not empty. That's not a good thing either. But don't eat a ton. If you don't typically eat breakfast, don't just start eating like a full omelet, because that can upset your stomach. Believe it or not, we've had students that have struggled on the English section because their stomach was upset because they ate too big of a breakfast. Right? These are all things that I have seen because over the last 7 or 8 years, I've worked with over 1,000 students, if you can believe that. And all of these things that I'm trying to communicate to you guys are things that I've actually seen from students recently, right? Or in the past 7 or 8 years. And so that's a great example of something where, like, don't eat a big breakfast if you're not ready to eat a big breakfast, so that you don't have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the English test and you feel terrible. Okay, guys, this is a great question. Okay, so yeah, major caffeine. Yeah, John, right? Going to the bathroom, right? Those are types of things that you don't think about when you're taking a practice test because you're at your home and you're just like, it's fine if you do that. But on the real thing, when you can't leave, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I got to go to the bathroom, right? And you're in the middle of the English test and you're like, I don't remember anything about punctuation. I just have to go to the bathroom. Those are the types of things that we have to account for, that you have to take seriously because you're not going to be allowed to get up. That stress level is going to increase if we're not taking that part of it seriously. Zach, in terms of a caffeine stuff, in terms of caffeine, I actually think caffeine is fine if you typically drink coffee or some type of caffeine before school, then I think it's fine. Because again, you're getting yourself ready to go for school. That's essentially why they start this test at 8 a.m. is so that it's signaling the same schedule that you've been on for school and that nothing changes. You get up at 6:30 in the morning. You for those of us who are bad students, again, I hate to say this, but for those of us who are bad students, you probably try to finish the last of your homework. Anybody ever done that before? Right? Try to finish the last of your homework as you eat breakfast and scramble to get ready for school. Okay? At 6:30 or whatever. Maybe some of you guys struggle to get out of bed. What was the worst case scenario, as it was for me many a time, was struggling to get out of bed and having homework to do. So getting up at 7:30 for 8:15 class and then and still having homework to do. That's always a struggle. Okay, but we want to try to do things that simulate how we feel in the morning normally so that we don't have anything that's unexpected. We say this constantly in our programs and on these live streams. Control what you can control. If you think about how poorly you could do, then it's going to happen. If instead you think about, I'm going to go into this test tomorrow or on Saturday and I'm going to answer as many questions that I possibly can. I'm going to answer all of those correctly. That might only be 30 questions on the math test. I don't know where you guys are at this point in time. That might only be 30 questions on the math test. But get those 30 right. Find the number of questions you feel comfortable answering and then go in with the goal that you're going to answer that many questions. And that's your goal. It's not to go in and think, oh my God, I could have the best day in the world. Yeah, everybody could have that, but you wouldn't be watching this live stream if you knew that you were going to go in and get a 36. Right? Everybody could go in with the expectation that they could have the best day in the world, and that could happen. And I would be thrilled if that did happen. But rather than thinking that way, think reasonable expectations, and it's amazing that if you have reasonable expectations, how quickly those are exceeded. That's what we have to be thinking about. Yeah, you have 5 minutes left. Yeah, great question. They'll let you know when you have 5 minutes left, and if you have a really good proctor, they'll typically let you know when you have 20 minutes left as well. Good question there. In terms of time warnings. Yeah, guys, fatigue. So a huge part of this, and then we'll move on to the reading test, a huge aspect of this in terms of getting better and doing better comes from the ability to overcome stress. Now, if you're typically a stressed out person, what I want you to think about is the reason that colleges still consider these tests so important. You can, we're regulars, our teachers and tutors regularly post on Reddit. We deal with kids, we deal with students every day taking these tests. And a lot of times we get the feedback like, well, I don't know why this test is still so important. Well, guess what? I've looked at this so often that I can tell you exactly why it's so important. You can argue the content of this test every day, all day, and I wouldn't disagree with you. Is punctuation the right thing to test? Is this math concept the thing to test? I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is in terms of content. But the bottom line is this. If you want to go to Harvard, you're competing against the top 1% of all students in the world. And at Harvard, you're going to have to take a math final on a Saturday against the top 1% of the students in the world. Everything in college is graded on a curve. Your whole class is going to be graded on a scale, right? It's not graded like you do in high school. So if you have to go to Harvard or you have to go to MIT and you have to sit through that stress, as the last thing in the world that MIT wants to do is have to say that you can't go to that school anymore because your grades aren't good enough. And if they don't know that you're capable of sitting there and taking a 3 to 3.5 hour test that they know without a shadow of a doubt is coming in college, then that's the problem. So again, the reason these tests are still so important to these colleges is not because of the content, not proving that you know how to do conjunction rules. It's the ability to battle through when you feel overwhelmed. How am I going to do one more question, right? One more question. Give me one more. I can get one more right. And then all of a sudden that one more is like, well, I just did that one. I can get that one right. Let me get one more right. I can get 2 right. Come on. Let's go. Get 2 right. And that ability to continue to convince yourself that you can keep pushing forward, that you can move the goalpost one more step forward is that's the key. I mean, that's the key to this whole exam. And that's why colleges like Harvard and MIT and all these unbelievable schools still take this test so seriously when, again, the content on the test can be argued all day and all night. And I wouldn't disagree with you if anybody came with anything that said something that the content was wrong on these exams. However, I will never disagree with Harvard and MIT in terms of the fact that you have to take 3 to 3.5 hour tests in college, and you have to be able to take these tests in order to prove that you can do that for them. Because they don't want to kick you out of school. They don't want your grades to be bad. They want to keep you there. They want you to be a successful member of their program so that you go excel. And that's the truth for every college. Okay, so I just want you guys to keep that in mind. Keep that thought process in mind about why you're doing this. No, Mercy, you're not gonna look like an idiot because I don't like wearing a watch either. Some students do, and I'm never gonna. That is an all personal thing on the watch issue. Mercy, I never wore a watch in high school. I never wore a watch now when I do these real-time videos because I hate thinking about the timing. I'm okay if I run out of time because it just is what it is. If I run out of time on a section, I just guess and it is what it is. But if I'm constantly going like this on my watch and looking down, for me personally, that's very irritating. On the flip side, we have a lot of students that would feel more anxious if they didn't have a watch on. So if you feel anxious without wearing a watch, then go wear a watch. This is very much independent. Take what I know about the test and what I'm trying to convey to you guys, and then make it very personal to you. Ultimately, look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm the one taking the test. Chase doesn't know everything about me, and that's true, I don't. I know a lot about this test, and I want you to take what I'm saying about the test and apply it to you individually, because it's going to be different for each of you. And take that individualness and say, okay, this is how it's going to work for me. I know what I know about the scale now. I watched the review, I did all this stuff, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to take it individually because this test, I feel very empowered knowing that it's my test and that I can go out there and I can crush this thing because I know what I'm capable of. Right? Don't listen to everything I had to say. It drove me nuts. Part of the reason we started this whole Star Tutors thing in these live streams is because I used to work for a number of companies, including big companies that claim to know everything about this. And every time I'd go into this, it would be like the only way to do something was this way. The reason I did well on these tests when I was younger, and the reason that Sarah did well earlier is because she didn't listen to everything that I said. I guarantee it. She took what knowledge that I was trying to present to her and took it for what it's worth because she thought that she trusted me to know that I knew something about the ACT. And then she adopted it to make it her own. And that's why she got a perfect score on the test. That ability to be very individual and know that you're the one taking it, you know how you feel in a given moment, you know how if you have to take a deep breath, even if that wastes a little bit of time on one question, it will save you for the rest of the test. If you take a deep breath, if you relieve the stress a little bit, just be like, all right, I got another reading test. I got one more passage on reading to go. I got one more passage on science to go. One more question, whatever it is, that stress relief will help you in so many ways. Boom, right, guys? I love it. If anything about the confidence boost, I can't tell you how much I love to see those comments. Okay, I cannot tell you how much I love to see those comments. If this is a confidence boost to you, then I've done my job. If I'm coming in here and telling you that the only way to take the reading test is by doing my method, that's so stupid. I hate that. I hated it when I worked for other companies. I hated it when I was a kid. And some of that stubbornness, while it's, again, it's very bad, laziness and stubbornness is pretty much terrible in every other aspect of your life. Believe me, I know. The ability to do well on these tests, it actually has a certain effect. Okay, because you're like, you know what? I don't care what anybody says. I know what I know about the test. I watched the review. I know how the scale works. I know what I know in terms of grammar rules and math rules. I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to do my best today, and I'm going to give it everything I got, and I have a goal number of questions in mind. Not a goal score, a goal number of questions for each section, and I'm going to try to hit that goal. And if you do that, I guarantee your score comes out the way that you want it to. If you don't do that and you let all these other factors, how am I going to do? Oh, if I don't get this score, then my friends... then I'm embarrassed to tell my friends about the score. All that stuff doesn't matter, right? Move on from that and try to get as many questions done as you possibly can and be accurate on those questions. And if that happens, your score will just shoot through the roof, I promise. Okay, that's it, guys. Yeah, I'm telling you, I get jacked up on these live streams. I'm like, let's go, ready to run through a wall, because this is the way that I thought when I was a kid. And if you have this ability to overcome, to push through something, to not let the fatigue get to you, that is worth 50 million hours of content review. The ability to just move through the stress and push through that for the 3.5 hours. And then guess what, guys? Don't think about this ever again. It's not like I want you to leave the test on Saturday and be like, oh, you know what? I can't wait to go back and do some more review. No, go hang out with your friends. Hang out with your family. Have fun on Saturday night. That all allows you to relieve that stress that you feel during the test. But during the test, be present and focused. Okay, so without that, I know that was probably too long of a monologue here and a little bit of a ramble, but it's so important. Nothing that we cover in terms of content tonight will overcome what I just said over the last 10 to 15 minutes in terms of, getting fired up and pushing through those stress levels. You guys got this. Okay, so we're going to move on to the reading section now. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I want you guys to do in terms of reading, or at least what works for us. And Sarah, this is definitely one. Sarah, if you can comment pretty significantly on this one, just because of that timing aspect that we talked about before, and like feeling mostly remember the how long it takes you to read each passage. That's really what I want to try to hit home here. If you have a reading strategy that involves skimming, don't all of a sudden be like, I got to change my strategy tonight for Saturday. Don't do that. But it's our belief, okay, that reading thoroughly will allow you to answer so many more questions than if you don't read thoroughly. There's so much consistency. There's consistency and confidence that comes with reading thoroughly. Let me tell you guys something. The idea that you have to color, like, honestly, guys, this is crazy. But I went through a training with a company one time, after I'd already been doing this for a while, that wanted you to color code every single question, like to identify the question type. They wanted you to skim the passage, not really pay attention to the reading, but then color code the question so you knew exactly what you were looking for. Guys, that will work if you take like 150 hours to recognize every question. It's just a really easy way to get people to spend a lot more money because it's going to take forever to do. This is called the reading test for a reason. If you're a junior right now and you don't regularly read, I highly encourage you to read regularly. Focus on trying to get better at reading more often and reading thoroughly and constantly. Okay? Because if you really read and you read thoroughly and you take time to read, the questions are very, very easy and very straightforward. Sarah mentioned this earlier, and I think somebody mentioned like, oh my God, I can't believe you take that much time. Sarah said she takes 5 minutes to read the passage. 5 minutes, and in order to get a perfect score, you have about 9 minutes per passage. And she said she took 5 minutes per passage just to read. She got a perfect score. Okay, so it's not like I have to make this up. She takes 5 minutes, 4.5 to 5 minutes. I do the same thing. These are the strategies that we want. 4.5 to 5 minutes to really thoroughly read and understand what you're reading. The questions are so easy. What I want you guys to remember is that on any given reading test, look how many lines there are. 85. So there's 85 to 90 lines on every reading passage. Not to mention, these are double spaced, right? These are 2 columns. So really, it's like reading 45 lines of a Word document. And if you guys can believe it, these are all written, all of the passages here are written at a 8th to 9th grade reading level. I bet if you guys didn't know that before, hopefully that gives you some confidence. 8th to 9th grade reading level. Okay, if you didn't know that before, I hope that gives you some confidence, and that's a true statement. Every passage on this test is written at an 8th to 9th grade reading level. You are double spaced for 85 to 90 lines. If you know that, then taking 5 minutes to really thoroughly read and memorize what you're reading shouldn't feel that overwhelming, hopefully. Okay, it shouldn't feel that overwhelming. Okay, and so if you're reading to thoroughly read these double-spaced questions, right, double-spaced lines, then as Sarah just said in the comments, you're going to do really well when you get to the questions. The questions are not going to feel very, very difficult. And the reason I say that this leads to more consistency, I can't guarantee that it is the best way for you personally, but the reason that I can say that it guarantees consistency is because even if you have to skip the entire last passage and guess on that passage, it's very difficult to have like that big downward spiral, where you just freak out and you're just feeling so overwhelmed with the timing. It's difficult to do that when your strategy is to read thoroughly. Because you know what it's talking about. Like when you read the content of the passage, even if you don't pick up everything, right? Even if you struggle a little bit with comprehension and you're going a little bit slower, it's difficult because you know what's going on. When you get to the questions are going to ask you something about that 85 to 90 line, 8th to 9th grade reading level passage. And you're going to think like, oh yeah, I at least know what they were talking about. I might not know the answer to this question, but I know what they were talking about. So you don't have that moment of like, when you skim, where you're like, what in the world is going on? I can't find this answer. I can't find it anywhere. And that just builds up that anxiety and that stress. From a consistency and a confidence standpoint, reading thoroughly, because it's called the reading test, is so important, right? Not thinking about this exam as something that's crazy, just thinking about it as simplistic as possible. Simplistic as possible. It's a reading test that tests you on 90-line double-spaced passages that are written at an 8th to 9th grade reading level. That doesn't mean that all of you are going to be able to finish the reading test. And that doesn't mean that you're stupid because you can't finish the reading test. No, that's not what that means at all. So you don't want to think those negative thoughts. Think positively. If I can only get through 30 questions, 3 passages right now, then if I'm a junior, I want to do everything in my power to get better at reading. Think about it as, if I can only get through 30 questions right now, 33 passages, think to yourself, do I read often? And if the answer to that is yes, then please message us, because we can help you with that. If the answer to that is no, I only can get through 30 questions, but I don't read very often, then there's your answer. Just you have to find a time to read more often. If you're a senior taking this for the first or last time, if you're a senior, then think simplistic as possible and just try to get through 30 questions. If you have time to get through the 4th passage at the end, great, but set the expectations at getting through 30 questions. If you guys get through 30 out of 40 questions, but you're accurate on those 30, you are statistically guaranteed on all recent reading tests to get at least a 30. Maybe that might be, let's say to get at least a 29. Because if you're 30 for 40 and then you guess the rest of the way down using our guessing strategy, you get 30 right minimum, and sometimes it's more than that, but at the minimum you're going to get 33 out of 40 answer choices correct, and that's a 29 on any recent test. Okay guys, any questions on that? It's pretty simple. The reading strategy is pretty simple. Just read till you can't read anymore, and then take the questions as simply as possible. Don't overthink them. Don't think that they're trying to trick you. The ACT reading section, the beauty of it is while it's very fast, you do have to go pretty quickly in order to get a 36. While that's maybe true, the same can be said of how simple it is. The questions are very straightforward. The passages are very straightforward. They're never going to try to confuse you with a kind of a crazy passage. And so that's a great thing because it leads to a lot of consistency and confidence. Okay, guys, any questions on that reading test? Any questions on the reading section before we move on? And guys, I honestly think some of our yeah, guys. And by the way, no, we're gonna move on to the science section. So I didn't mean like any questions overall. I just meant any questions related to reading specifically. And then 1 second here. I think the most popular. So 2 things. First, the most popular video I think we've ever done is an ACT reading real-time video. So Zach, remember that E and K only come up on the math test. So the guessing strategy should be the same always. Is that if you have to guess on any number of questions, you're looking for the answer column on that specific section that's used the least, right? So if you look back at your bubble sheet on Saturday and you see that AF, right, BG, CH, and then DJ, and then you see here that there's an EK, right, on the math section only, you're always still looking back at your answer columns to see which of these choices has been answered the least. And if you've been accurate, this will work every time, that the least used answer choice, again, it only works if you've been accurate on the other questions. The least used answer choice will be the one that you want to guess the same letter all the way down. So on the reading section, let's say it's B and G. I guarantee this works. Watch this. Ready? Okay, just to give you guys some confidence in this. If I go back down here to the answer choices and look at the reading section. Okay, look how many times on this test, right? Just erase this for a second. So we were talking about it already. Okay, or let's just make it math, I guess, just to. Okay, in these last 10 questions, right? In these last 10 questions, we have A and F, just because to answer your question about. Wait, sorry, that's not. Is this reading now? Let's talk about reading because I'm on it. Okay, so let's see. We have A. No, that might not be the best one in the last 10. It's B and G, I think, right? Yeah, B and G. Okay, so look, guys, in these last 10 questions, if we guess B and G, and this one we don't actually get as lucky on, but we guess B and G all the way down on these last 10, or D and J, right? D and J would also work. We're going to get 3 additional questions right if we never see the last passage. If you guys look, we have 1, right, B and G. Look how many times B and G comes up early on in this test. Okay, it comes up 5 times in the left column. Okay, and each of these answer choices should show up about 10 times. Is what, unfortunately, the ACT hasn't figured this out yet. I don't know what they're thinking. But they haven't figured out that they're relatively evenly spaced, right? Relatively evenly distributed. So you have A, G, or GG, right? And then a B and a G here. There's 5 there. And then you have 1 G here. And what do you know, right? There's only 1 G in passage number 3. So going into the last passage, there's only 6 answer choices that have used B and G. And then boom, you have 3 more here. And now we have a total of 9. It's not perfectly distributed. So please write that down. This is not perfectly distributed. It's not going to be 10, 10, 10, and 10 on the reading test if there's 40 questions and 4 answer choices. But it's close enough. It's going to be like 9, 10, 11, and 12, or whatever the math works out to be. So if you find that there are only 6 B's and G's, if you look at your bubble sheet and you see that the answer column B and G hasn't been used very often, then guess that letter for your letter choice and guess the same letter all the way down. I guarantee it works every time. Okay, so that's just something to think about with the reading section, or with any section in terms of the guessing. And then, oh yeah, I was going to post the video. So guys, here's the CO2 reading video. CO2 reading, real time. Okay, so that's a recent test. And then again, I think our most popular video, you guys have seen, maybe you guys may have seen this one, or one of our most popular videos, I should say. Here's the 74F reading test. Maha, absolutely. Thank you for working hard. It's pretty easy to want to do these things, guys, if you guys are willing to work hard and ask all these great questions. Mercy, yeah, absolutely. If you keep working hard, if you're at that level and you keep working hard, I wouldn't set your sights on a 35, 36. Like Sarah already said, I would set your sights on a 34. That's not to say that I don't think you can get a 35 or 36. If you can get a 34, you can get a 36. There's no question. Ask Sarah, right? The goal in all this for Sarah was to get a 34. That's what we set the expectation at. In the back of my mind, did I think she was going to get a 36? Yeah, probably. Right? Initially, I think we even said, like, let's talk about the ACT so that you can get a 36 on the ACT. But the mindset that we had her think about as she went through this was to get a 34. And then there's no pressure on her, right? Did I think she could answer enough questions to get a 36? Absolutely. Was the expectation to get a 36? Absolutely not, because that just puts too much stress on every question. If you think, okay, I have a few questions, I have some cushion here to get a 34, then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, I can do this question. I can do it a few more than 34, and all of a sudden that's a 36. Guys, absolutely. First of all, I really appreciate you guys saying this with the nice comments and any comments on these videos, any nice comments. I see those. I might not see them right away. It might be another teacher or tutor that's responding to those or responding on Reddit, whatever it is. But I eventually see those comments, and it really makes a big deal to me because it makes me want to do more of these videos when I know that it's helping you. And most importantly, when I know that you guys are working hard. It makes me want to work harder. It makes me want to make sure that you guys have the resources that are necessary if you're willing to work hard. Again, nothing drives me crazier than when somebody's like, why didn't I get this score? And then we look back and they haven't done any of the work. If you've done the work, the score will come. I'm 1,000% sure of that. So I don't have to worry about saying like, well, what happens if I do the work and it doesn't come? I guarantee it will come eventually if you keep putting in hard work. I guarantee it. Okay, so that's what I want you guys to be thinking about, that positivity going into this test on Saturday and then any test moving forward. Okay, guys, so I know what time is this? Yeah, we're kind of right on time. This is great. Okay, because we're going for another 20 minutes or so. Guys, the last thing that I want to bring up is the science section. We're moving on to science. If you guys have seen some of our videos this 3-pass method that we developed was actually a result of the science test, not of the math test. We recognized later that it worked for math as well, but for the science test, it's absolutely essential. Because what we realized on science is that on this first pass of questions, there are 20 questions, probably 20 out of 40 questions, that are extremely direct. And what we mean by direct is that they have short questions. They're short questions. Okay, and that they have short answer choices. That doesn't take a lot of thought, right? And it doesn't take any science knowledge to answer these. The other types of questions that you want to look out for, so beyond the short questions and short answer choice questions, also look out for questions that begin with the words according to or contain the words according to, okay? As well as based on. Guys, I appreciate the comments in the comment section. I really do. I promise you that it really means a lot to me because I put a lot of time and effort into this. 1,000 students over the last 7 or 8 years, if you guys can believe that. It means a lot to me to know that it's meaning something to you guys. So again, the positive encouragement for me, just like it's positively encouraging for you to listen to me talk, it's very positive for me to see these comments. It makes me want to get jacked up and run through a wall again, right? How can we find one more question to get you guys to get one more point? How can we get the next scholarship, right? I've seen enough students at this point that it's so important that to make sure that happens. So you guys got to keep that thought in mind. And if you think that, I'll think that. I want to try to be as positive as possible. So if you guys are positive, it only makes me more positive. It makes me want to do more of these things. Okay, so you got to keep thinking about that. How do I get one more question right? Right? It's not over. The test isn't over. I got 20 questions left for science. Then I can go do whatever I want. Right? Go do stuff that probably, right? Go have fun on Saturday night, whatever that means. Right? Go have fun on Saturday night with your friends. Okay, but don't do that in the middle of the test. Don't be thinking about that in the middle of the test. Think about what you need to do to get one more question right, because that could be the difference between getting a scholarship or not, getting into a school or not. I hate to say that these tests are that important at this point, but for better or for worse, right now they are. And if you get a good score, if you get a score that, especially during a test optional year, it can mean even more. Okay, the great news for you guys, for seniors especially, the great news is that it is test optional, so you don't have to submit the score. That takes all the pressure off. We just read an article that 60% of students are not going to submit a score this year. So 60% of students are not going to submit a score. So that means if you're part of that 60%, it's not that big of a deal. But if you are part of the 40% that does submit a score and it's a great score, that gives you a boost. But you have that ability to work it out. So seniors have a big advantage this year because you get to decide. The test optional route is the best thing that's ever happened to college admissions because it takes so much stress off. And it allows you to really be a great test taker and to work on being a great test taker rather than worrying about what score am I going to get, and if I don't get the score, I'm a failure. No, how do I become a better test taker so that when I get to college, when I have to take these tests, I'm ready to go. Right? I think these same thoughts in college. Okay, but in any case, this according to and based on, these questions are so important. Okay, according to, based on. These are the questions, guys, that are going to be the ones that are very easy to answer. So let me give you an example of this. I hope that you guys know, and I hope that you guys realize, maybe from my comments on not being a great student, that I really have no idea how anything about the study of the female cockroach. I've never studied that ever in my life, if you guys can believe that. I have no idea what they're talking about here. None. I have no idea how this relates to cat food or peanuts or cheese or ham. I have no idea. I have a very limited idea because I haven't taken AP Bio in forever of what AP lipids, lipids, proteins, all that stuff. I have very limited knowledge. Does that mean I can't do well in the science section? Absolutely not. In this first pass, we see right here, according to figure 1. So I'm circling figure 1. The mass of cheese, right, where we might be looking at cheese, at 4 hours was closest to which of the following? Okay, so I look at cheese. I know that, right? Figure 1, I have that here. Cheese is the one that's not filled in at all, and I'm looking at 4 hours. So that looks like it's at about what? Just above 180. Looks like it's about 185. Right? Yeah, it's right in the middle of the line. That's 190 to 180. Did I need to know about anything on that? No, absolutely not. I see based on in this next question, right? I'm looking for based on. Based on figure 1, which of the 4 foods should the company place in the trap to maximize the chance of capturing this? To maximize the so mass of food remaining means that that they're eating more of it. So that means that peanuts, right? Because that one is the one that's lowest every time after a certain amount of time. Peanuts should be the right answer. Now, guys, just for the record, I've seen this test before, right? We've done these real-time videos. In those real-time videos, that's the first time I've seen this test. But once I've done those videos, we start to incorporate those tests into our program. So I've seen this test a million times. It's not going to be that on number 2 here, right, that I'm going to be able to answer that as quickly as I just did. But what the point I'm trying to make is that because it says based on, and because it says 4 foods, and it's figure 1, I know exactly where I need to look in order to answer that question. Okay, let's keep going. These ones look too hard. You guys can already see that I circled these ones, but let's look at number 6, right? It says based on, if you guys can believe it, the answer is G. Okay, it says based on table 1, when 200 milligrams of each of the 4 foods, remember we're looking at table 1 now, and I have to think about that. Table 1 instead of figure 1 was placed in the box. Water accounted for more than 100 milligrams of the mass of which of the foods? So we're looking for 100 milligrams in table 1. Okay, and we're looking for water, right? So water, table 1, 100 milligrams. Table 1, let's see, what is this? Percent by mass, and it's 200 milligrams, right? I was looking for, because I didn't see anything over 100, and that didn't make any sense. Okay, so percent by mass, what you have to be above 50%, right? Because if it's water, 50% of 200 is 100, and we're looking for something above 100. So it looks like it's cat food and ham. Is that an answer choice? Yeah, G. What do you know? The answer is G. Okay, does that all make sense though, guys? that this 3-pass method, if you never worry about 3, 4, and 5, because those are going to be confusing, maybe more time consuming, maybe they're not, maybe they end up being easier when we come back to them. But for the first part, we want to try to find questions that are very straightforward, short answer choices where we know exactly what we're trying to answer, rather than worrying about these long questions that are all equal value to all of the easy questions. It's amazing, but oftentimes the ACT will put the single easiest passage last. Okay, if you look at this, I say that now and now. No, that's true, right? This isn't the easiest passage, but what I want you guys to see, it has easy questions, right? According to is here, according to the results of study 1. Anytime you guys get graphs in the question, so if you see graphs as answer choices or tables as answer choices, these are really easy questions. So we have 1, 2, looks like 39 is going to be easy. It's very short, very straightforward. And it looks like 40 is going to be easy because it says based on. So if we take too much time to answer the earlier, harder questions that we should have skipped, we're going to miss 4 questions. That's on the science section. Okay, on the science section, you miss 4 questions when every question is worth a full point on science. So you're basically just starting out right here with a 32 if you don't get to the last passage. The whole idea of this 3-pass method is so that you see every question before determining, and then you answer the easy ones as you go. You're seeing every question as you go. You're answering the easy ones. And then when you double back to the beginning, now you know what's to come, and you know where the easy and hard questions are going to be on that second pass. And you're already 20 out of 20, hopefully, on the first pass, and you're 20 questions closer to getting 40 out of 40 on the ACT science test. Okay, yeah, and Maha just said it perfectly. The ACT science section will never require you to know anything that's outside information. Does outside information sometimes help you, like knowing the pH scale? Absolutely. But if you don't know that, it will give it to you in the passage. Now, do you save time by already knowing that pre-test? Absolutely. But you will have that ability to go back and read the passage. So when you finish with these easy questions, these according to all of these data analysis questions that don't require any science knowledge, then you can make the decision to go back and really read the questions you have left and decide, okay, should I read this passage or is this going to take too long? And then you can start those second pass questions. Okay, does that all make sense, guys? Can everybody give me one final thumbs up on the science section if that idea makes sense from this comprehensive review? Okay, and then I'm going to leave the last 15 minutes or so open to just general questions. It can be about science or whatever, but yeah, if you guys have any questions, just general questions, let me know. All right, guys. So one last thing that I want to post before answering any of these general questions. One final thing I want to post. Yeah, 3-pass for math and science, guys. 3-pass means that you find the easy questions first. You go all the way through the test, finding easy questions. You never get frustrated. Even if you start a question and you realize like halfway through that you have no idea what you're doing, you're 30 seconds in and you're like, I don't even know where I'm supposed to start with this, move on, right? It doesn't kill you if you start a question and then you decide that you shouldn't have started it, but it does kill you if you keep trying to get frustrated and try to answer that one question. That one question is not worth any more than the 6 easy questions that are to follow, so why waste your time and why get frustrated with that one? That 3-pass method is designed to keep everything simple and everything straightforward, leading into then you can always come back and answer those. Yeah, Mercy, if you use the 3-pass method, you're still answering all the questions. But the point that I'm trying to that I want to show you guys is by skipping questions that are data analysis, or by doing the data analysis questions first, you're not losing anything by not focusing on that specific passage. Everybody's always nervous about like, wait, I'm just going to move on after skipping 3 questions on this passage. That creates anxiety, but it's not your normal type of skipping. It's skipping with a purpose. You're skipping to get to the data analysis, those easy questions that have nothing to do with science first. And then when you double back and go back to the beginning on math and science, then you can take your time to read, knowing exactly how many questions you've already answered, knowing how much time you have left, knowing that you're already warmed up for the rest of the questions on the test. Yeah, as Sarah said, I would just recommend going right to the questions, at least for the data analysis on pass 1. I would do all of those questions without reading any part of the passage. And then when you double back for the pass 2, if you get to that point, then I would start reading and thinking about the questions a little bit more closely. And if you do need to read the passage for a specific question, then feel free to go back and read that. But you've already answered at that point like 20 or 25 correct answers, correct questions, without ever having to think or think about or overwhelm yourself with the passage. Guys, one thing that I do want to post here before we, please make sure that you guys watch this video. Oops. This video is the 5 essential items. Okay, so that's just the 5 essential items to have ready the night before ACT test day. I would recommend copying that link that I just posted in the chat and making sure that you have those items that are in that video ready to go before the test. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple what those items are in terms of like a pencil calculator, but there are things that you want to make sure that you have ready to go. Yeah, good question. So Shivani, what I would do on those questions that ask about student 1, here's what I do on those questions. So guys, those are those conflicting viewpoints questions. Let me find them. Yeah, like student 1, right? Here's what I do, is I don't read any part of the passages initially. I do read those. But if it says based on student 1 and I see that in the question, then I go read student 1, specifically just reading student 1, right? That was question number 7. If I see, right, student 3, really you're doing this just like you do those data analysis questions and they become really easy. Instead of looking at a table or figure, you're doing much more like what you do on the reading test, and you're going back and reading the specific student that applies to that question. So rather than going and analyzing table 1, you're just going back and reading student 1. If you get something like number 10, where it says student 1 and 2, student 2, 3, and 4, well, go read student 2, right? Or go read student 3, because if it's not student 2 and 3, it's not all of the students, and it's not answer choice G, right? You can eliminate answer choices if one of those students doesn't work out. Brianna, absolutely. I'm so thrilled that you've done that. You feel like you feel more confident with this test, because that's ultimately the goal. If you go into Saturday with a negative mindset, it's gonna be crushing. If you go into the Saturday with a very positive mindset, like, yeah, I got this. I can at least get 30 of these 40 questions right. I know how to do this. I can find the easy ones. Then you crush the test. It's not crushing. You crush the test. Okay, that confidence and positive attitude is so important. So if there's any confidence that you've gained from these videos, I'm thrilled. That's the most important thing that you can gain going into Saturday. It's just like this ability, like, you know what? I might not get a 36, but that doesn't make me less of a person, because it doesn't. I might not get, I'm going to find out how deep I can dig. I'm going to find out what I'm made of, and I'm going to go into Saturday, and I'm going to do the absolute best that I can do today. That's so empowering individually when you think, you know what, I'm just going to see what I can get, what I can kind of accomplish today. And if I do really well, if I do the best, I've maximized my score individually, then that's a good day. Because that means that I did something, I accomplished something on my own, I worked hard, I found that score, and I made it happen. That's what you guys got to be thinking about going into Saturday. Think that positivity. It will help so much. It will give you that ability to think, one more question, I got this. Right? Rather than thinking, oh my God, I failed the reading test, so I might as well fail science too. Right? That's like the worst attitude in the world. But I know sometimes that comes up in your mind. Like, oh, I failed. I thought I was going to get a 34 on the English test, but I know I got a 28, which you don't know, right? You don't even know at that point. You're in the middle of the testing. You have no idea what the scale is going to look like. Oh, I should have gotten a 34, but I got a 28, so I might as well fail the other 3 sections. That's the wrong mindset. You don't know where you're going to be, so keep pushing forward, right? Keep that positive momentum all the way through, and then you can worry about the score or whatever after it's done. Okay, that's so important. Yeah, guys, great question. Wow, this is going to sound terrible, but when I was a kid, because I could drive at this point, I would arrive at the test site like late. Because it's not, don't do this. Don't do this. This is not to say arrive at the test site late, but I completely agree with you that if I showed up, it's the same thing with like giving a speech. I always, like, if you give a speech to a school or whatever, whenever I do that for schools or districts or whatever, I always just have note cards with bullet points that I want to talk about, but not like this exact speech written out, because that makes me feel too much pressure if I show up early to something. Show up at, if it's an 8 o'clock test, show up at 7:30 or 7:45, and then just start doing practice problems on your phone on the StarU app. Just do practice problems as you go so that you're thinking about the test rather than thinking about all of the anxiousness and anxiety, that stressfulness, all that stuff that comes with this. Do practice problems on your phone or show up. Unfortunately, I was so bad at this that I would show up at like 7:55 for the 8 o'clock test, even though it was recommended to show up way before or even after 8 o'clock. But at least I was scrambling then and not thinking about the testing. I was thinking about just getting there on time so I didn't get kicked out and my parents getting mad at me. I would think about like scrambling to get there, and then when I sat down to take the test, it was what it was. I just sat there and took it. Rather than thinking about how poorly I could do, I would just be like, oh man, I hope I parked my car in a legal zone so I don't get towed. Right? And then it's like, oh, time to start the English test. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I gotta focus. I gotta get locked in right now. And that's a huge benefit not to feel anxious and stressful like that. Yeah, guys, the scale isn't exactly the same as the one that we looked at tonight, or even one that you could look at in the past. But generally speaking, whatever scale you look at, it's give or take 2 questions. So if you're looking to get a 30 on the math test, look at like a 50 questions right, or 49, probably 49 questions right on math. And then give or take 2 questions from one scale to the next, and that's what the scale will always be. So again, if you're looking at a 30 on math, look at 49 questions answered correctly. That's what it takes to get a 30 on the math test. And then on any given scale, it's give or take 2 questions, but it's always right in that range. So you don't have to overthink that. The scales will be different from test to test. But again, it's give or take 2 questions from any section of any scale you've ever seen. Good question. All right, guys, so it's almost the end of the 2 hours. I'm going to let you guys get out of here. I know some of you guys are logging in. We've had students log in from all over the world for these live streams, certainly from the East Coast in the U.S. I know that's getting late. I know you guys probably have school tomorrow and got to get ready for that, get some homework done. So we're going to sign off now. I hope these things have been helpful for you guys. Again, the positive comments always encourage me to want to do more of these. I have so much more content that we want to release. Please help us spread the word and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But help us spread the word amongst your friends. Certainly anybody younger, you're right, in a younger class, so you don't feel like you have to be competing against them. If that is a thought on your mind, like, oh, I don't want to tell my friend about this. Right? But if you want to help us subscribe, that would be great, because we have a lot more content we want to release, and we want to be doing this full time. But unfortunately for now, we still have to be doing a lot of other things that help. But we can do a lot more of these live streams for everybody and keep pushing this stuff out as long as that subscriber count continues to grow. So please help us continue to spread the word. I hope you guys have gotten something out of this, and you guys are going to absolutely crush it on Saturday. There's no doubt in my mind. You got to stay focused. Think individually. How do I accomplish my goals today? What do I need to do to get ready to go for today? And if that happens, if you guys are independent thinkers like that, you will absolutely crush it on Saturday. I guarantee it. Have a little stubbornness, right? Be like, you know what? This test isn't going to defeat me. I'm stubborn enough to keep pushing through. This test doesn't have anything on me. I'm going to keep working hard. I'm keep moving through this test, and then I can think about all the other things after the test is over. Okay? You guys are going to absolutely crush it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. I hope school is not too stressful for the rest of the week, and you guys are going to absolutely crush it Saturday morning. And if everything goes well or if everything goes poorly, it doesn't matter. Remember that you're the same person walking out of that test that you were walking in. Sun's still shining. Go hang out with your friends. Don't think about the test going forward. You guys are going to absolutely crush it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Have a great rest of your week. And we'd love to hear from you guys in the comments or anything after you're done with the test on Saturday. Just let us know how you did. We'd love to hear about it. So great job today, guys. You guys are going to crush it. And yeah, good luck, guys. Talk to you soon. See you guys for the next live stream. Good luck to the seniors especially. I know this is the last time you might be able to take it, so good luck to the seniors. You guys are going to do great.